Hey, don't kill me, don't kill me! Look, I freaking love Gravity Falls. It's my favorite show. I watched it when it came out. I was there for the Stanley twist. I learned how to code Caesar, Appas, and Visionaire through it. I even remember the entire fan base was convinced this guy looks like Timmy Turner's dad was Bill's secret brother. This is not a, hey, Gravity Falls was bad, actually, video. Far from it. I will say it's practically a masterpiece that has changed the landscape of Western animation and influenced so many other shows after. It deserves the respect it gets. But at the same time, you can't say it's perfect. Believe me, I did not want to do this. Again, I love this show. But whenever you've watched, I saw a lot of problems that I feel should be acknowledged or at least get more into. Some of these kind of hurt my rewatch experience and might have ruined a few episodes. Like, it was such a shock to me and partially a betrayal. It actually felt like that one scene in Goofy movie to me, like finding my child's a criminal. Like, personally, I'm doing this just to ask if anyone else notices a few of these problems and relates to how I feel about them. And also because I feel like Gravity Falls has kind of been a bit problematic. Where it goes into that problem I keep saying, that it's a piece of media that's put on a pedestal, treated as untouchable and absolutely perfect, and negatively impacts a lot of other media made after for not being good enough to the exaggerated standards we treat it. And in that case, I do really need to acknowledge, because I think it's one of the worst practices you can do. And it should be acknowledged Gravity Falls wasn't perfect, and that's fine, that's okay. And if anything, it's good that we acknowledge its problems instead of pretending this was the peak perfect show all the way through. A lot of shows have been negatively compared to it, despite the show carrying many similar problems, if not worse in a lot of cases. It's something that needs to be done, and if anything, can make us appreciate it more. So let's get into Gravity Falls and go through why it might not be as good as we remember it. Something tells me it's going to be the most controversial video I've done so far, and that's saying a lot. I didn't even know that the Book of Bill would release so soon and get the fandom a resurgence. I had this planned way in advance. Some of this stuff might already be common consensus in the fandom. I just want to give my 2 cents on them. Now, I will get into Gravity Falls as a summary first if you haven't seen it. But no, if you haven't seen it, do it. It's amazing and influenced so many shows. What are you doing here? Go watch it. I'm not going to spoil it for you. And even if you have seen it, I do recommend a fresh rewatch again to get a refreshed perspective without being blinded or influenced by old memories. And this video is probably going to get pretty nitpicky, but again, to clarify, I am covering the flaws and bad aspects of the show specifically, not just the good stuff. Believe me, it's always there, but it's just the focus of the topic and should not portray my complete opinion on the episode and quality. But the season 1, I do feel it suffers from a problem that a lot of season 1 episodes do in pretty much every show. Of course, need to set up everything. The world, the characters, the plots, and everything else. But that means the show rarely experiments or really gets out there, and it's still mostly in the introductory stage. So they don't have major stakes and follow a lot of generic episode plots, even the rather bad and tiring aspects. And it does get really apparent in this season. Now, Gravity Falls doesn't do them bad per se, they do it pretty well, but they often fall into the trap set up by them, and for a show that gets so well regarded for its revolutionary impact on animation and storytelling. The first episode is a good example, as has a lot of it aside from the introduction, and is what I feel is one of the worst episode tropes ever. New character shows up and gets chummy with another character, as this character is suspicious that they're bad news. And I don't exactly think that it's a good attempt at the trope and falls into a ton of traps for it. Like the suspicious character flat out stalking the other character and being obsessive over it, as the other character is so oblivious it takes it out on them when they say their suspicions. And this can literally only go 2 ways. One, they're proven right, and them acting so callously and suspicious is justified, and any lines crossed are completely ignored, or they really were just hounding an innocent person the whole time and they're just awful. And yeah, the show takes the former route. It's not a terrible use of the trope, but it's not doing anything different or making it any better, and again still carries all the problems with it. It does lead to some very frustrating parts and moments. At least the episode does make up for it a bit with the show's great humor and writing for the most part, and with the twist that it wasn't a zombie, but gnomes, which was foreshadowed brilliantly with Dipper accidentally turning the page to them earlier. Though, kind of think about it, the show starts out with a, hey, this is me, wonder how I got here thing, which I'm sure most people hate. And the entire episode is narrated like that. I think it's supposed to later be that Dipper is writing in the journal like the ending narrated, but it can't work since Dipper is directly referencing the audience watching the scenes at the moment. It's so weird. It's even weirder since the only other time is the ending narration by Dipper that's also somewhat matches the first entry we see, so he's talking to someone specific or is writing in the journal. It's kind of confusing. But back to the episode, again, it's weird that they use this trope as the introduction to the series, where it might feel like the main setup is fighting with the trope of the episode, when it probably should have done something different, when you know immediately how the episode is gonna end, using the same plot structure. But at the same time, you can argue it fits to introduce things using it, like the journal as a suspicious catalyst, and establishing Dipper's sleuth skills and Mabel's childless obliviousness and infatuation in a plot. But it is something I wish they got more unique with, especially since other shows' introductions like this are much more unique and exciting with their first episode plots. It gets better in the second episode, The Legend of the Gobblewonker, which is more Gravity Falls-like, with Stan wanting to go fishing with the duo, but they are more into trying to find a mysterious monster in the lake. It does fall into a bit of that trope of, oh, we gotta find the monster, let's give up. Oh no, it's real, action scene! But again, it's done fine, and the more that you can't see a mile away, but again, it works. The episode's good, it's just pretty simple story-wise, again helped by some great jokes. I mean, it gave us this.
Getting better,
and some good atmosphere and fun action. Also with a kind of BS twist that retroactively makes sense later, but I know they're not that far ahead. Headhunters is at least more unique, albeit it's a murder mystery that kinda goes on a little too long, but the twist is really good and creative, and Vince's show and does work well. But the major shakeup happens in episode 4, Hand That Rocks the Mabel, using the season 1 overworking antagonist, Gideon Gleeful. Amazing fun name. Stan's arch nemesis, owner of rival Mystery Shack-like function, even if it's not anything like the Mystery Shack and more of a floor show. As they get into a relationship with Mabel, but get way too clingy and she wants out. It's kind of like the first episode, but at least it's not entirely a formulaic trope people hate, but it does get into a bit of that when Mabel asks Dipper to break it off for them. But shows Gideon's legit psychotic as a mystical artifact giving him powers, as Mabel's able to finally work out the courage to deal with her own problems and save them. As the whammy of the episode ends with Gideon owning Journal 2 and sets up more mystery. It's Gravity Falls' first real attempt at setting up its mystery and plot since the first episode, but unfortunately, it's pretty sparse for a long time after. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing that they hooked you this early, or if they should have spread out the plot more, because it's basically nothing for the rest of the run. It actually brings up a kind of big point that bothers me nowadays. People nowadays, for some reason, are in such a massive rush to finish shows, they just say to skip every episode, even entire seasons, because they want to get that plot ASAP. And this is a huge problem in recent plot-driven shows after Gravity Falls. In the case of Owl House or Amphibia, people just say, oh, skip like all the run, there's nothing worth in the first season. Not only do I hate that mindset, since season 1s are important for establishing the shows and giving you connections to the characters, and I have no idea why this is a thing, that people are starting speed runs of shows they're watching and they completely ruining their experience with it forever. Like, I get it, you're busy, but the show's not going anywhere. You have time, don't ruin it. But people bog down these shows a lot, they just skip so many episodes, when Gravity Falls is so much worse in that regard. But you'll never hear anyone say, just skip season 1, there's nothing there. In Gravity Falls, if you're just going by plot pivotal episodes, then you need to watch 4, arguably 5 episodes in the entire first season. That's it. It gets better in season 2, but that's still 11 episodes out of 20, including the 3-part finale. If you had that same attitude with Gravity Falls, then you only watch 15 episodes of the entire show. And again, that ruins so much of the experience. Hell, my favorite episode can only count as filler. This is a shitty mindset to have that fundamentally ruins the watching experience, but plays into the problem that Gravity Falls is put on such a pedestal, despite it also has so many of the problems people drag down other shows for, and arguably worse. And I'll even say it, I think Gravity Falls is a worse season 1 than those other shows. Okay, yeah, boo me all you want, but rewatching it, a good set of these episodes have fundamental problems that drag them down so much, even beyond the few examples I've said, and I'll get into them. And episode 5 has one of the biggest problems of the series, Dipper's crush on Wendy, and Wendy honestly as a character. This is at least one of the more acknowledged problems of the show, since it does seriously bog it down in a lot of places. Wendy was pretty much just a background character before all of this, and gets focused as Dipper randomly gains a crush on her and spends the episode trying to impress her and her friends, ending up in a haunted convenience store. Also, side note, but this brain thing creeps me out ever since I saw it, and it feels so disconnected to the haunting going on. Like, is it just me, or does this feel like some other random monster that coincidentally is in the same place? I don't know. It also introduces Robbie, who's one of the worst characters in the show. But Dipper's crush on Wendy isn't a side thing, but it's pretty much the focus of practically any episode it appears in. And believe me, that's a lot. The 7th episode had the main plot be, again, to impress Wendy, actually not even that, just talk to her normally. 9th episode, Time Traveler's Pig, and I'll get to that one in a bit, but again, wants to impress Wendy. 10th episode, gets wrapped up because of Wendy. Summerween, technically too, then Deepen, and Boys Crazy, and even a little bit in the finale.
Forced me to work upstate at my cousin's logging camp.
What? You're leaving town? But we need you here.
Yeah, especially Dipper because of his giant crush on...
Like, this is seriously not the time for this show. Over a third of the season is dedicated to this. But it's not even a plot you can get into because of the giant elephant in the room being that he's 12 and she's 16. This objectively cannot work, and no one is going to want to see this or care about it. Now you might say, well, that's the point. It's supposed to be about childhood crushes and how they can't work out. Season 2's second episode literally deals with this, and the two talking about it and Dipper giving up on it. And yeah, that's true. But why is it in so many episodes? Why is it the main focus of them? Literally, Dipper spends much more time in the show trying to find a way to simp for this girl than he is actually finding out who wrote the journals. Why does this show almost treat like it has some legit chance and that we should root for him because they spent so much time on it? It's spending so much of the run on a plot that's ewy and the audience won't like and can't care for, and the payoff is literally that it never would matter or work out in the first place. I really gotta wonder on the writing side why they put so much effort into it. So much time and scenes that could have been used for any other plot. Like, did no one ask, are we really spending so much time with a kid trying to get with a teenager? Hell, some plots were literally written just because of that, like Double Dipper. Like, seriously, the cloning aspect was only there because they thought to instead make it about Dipper trying to get with Wendy.
You don't dance. But what if Dipper's a little more naive than you and he just wants to dance with Wendy and that's his conflict? And it was like, wait, Dipper wants to dance with Wendy. If that's his conflict, then what's getting in his way? What if Dipper's getting his own way by overthinking it? How do we manifest that through animation? What if it clones? Because that's the idea of getting...
It degrades so much of Dipper's character, and again, the main plot of the show. At this point, the synopsis should be 12-year-old desperately tries to get a teenage girl to like him, and maybe there's some paranormal mystery going on. It also has a really bad effect on Wendy, degrading her as a character too, as now nearly all of her appearances are just delegated to her being a shallow love interest in a relationship that can't work, even just forcing it in situations she has no real right to be in for that. Wendy doesn't have much of a character or narrative use beyond that aside from a few episodes. Wendy's character is just, she's cool. That's it. Nothing really bothers her, she's chill, a bit of a rebel, and she doesn't like doing her job. Again, this is another point that's acknowledged more about the show, but it's weird the show never actually utilizes her. As I said, season 1 is especially bad for this, since he pretty much always plays the role as a wannabe love interest in a one-sided relationship. That's it. Her only involvement is that Dipper likes her and wants to impress them. That's really not that good, especially for this show that does a lot with its characters. Season 2 at least gives us some more spotlight and making her more of an action girl taking charge in situations, which would be awesome, but she only really does this into the bunker and the season finale. And even then, it doesn't add much to her character, she's just cool in a more proactive way. Unfortunately, Wendy is super screwed over by the way she's written. Apparently, Alex wanted her to be like the coolest girl ever, nothing gets her down, she takes action, and of course someone like Dipper's gonna be attracted to her. But that makes it so that there's not much else to do with her. You don't know what's going on in her head, so it's hard to know what bothers her. So then you can't get any conflict, and then you can't get any investment. She just acts cool and does cool things. And really not help that most of her narrative importance is so that Dipper can simp for her. Alex said they tried to do more with Wendy, but they couldn't come up with a plot that fit with her character. They tried it, but Alex didn't like it and then rushed to make the last Mabelcorn in its place. Which is really surprising that that episode was made on the spot when it's one of the most plot important episodes in the series. Kinda shows the behind the scenes writing of the overall story wasn't as tightly knit as it seems, and it's kind of a miracle it ended up as great as it did. She's written as too cool to be bothered by anything, and that's not good for characterization or plots. So she's pretty much shallow because of that. But I'd argue against what Alex said. You can write a super cool character and still have them as an interesting and compelling character through their insecurities. It's been done before. And that's with Marceline from Adventure Time. The coolest character in the show, and now one of the coolest characters in fiction. She's a rock star with an attitude, rebellious and speaks her mind, chill as hell, and a literal monster in a fight. Like, I seriously don't think there's a character cooler than her. And despite all of that, they weren't afraid to show her insecurities, her vulnerabilities, and the tragedy of her life. Literally, her first episode as a protagonist had her dealing with her relationship with her father, thinking that he doesn't care about them, and it was kind of a lot. And even further in one of those heartbreaking episodes where she desperately tries to remind her practical father figure after he forgot everything and went insane, and not to mention the entirety of the Stakes series, and her past, regrets, lost relations, and tragedy. And despite all of that, she never stopped being cool and badass, and if anything became much more, and you care about her so much more as a character. It's one of the most interesting, compelling characters in that show. So I don't see why that couldn't work for Wendy. The only thing close to that is in Blind Eye Society, where she briefly admits that she's pretending to be chill, but was actually totally stressed out all the time, especially with her family. Which, speaking of which, they're so irrelevant to her character that I legit didn't even know she was Manly Dan's daughter until season 2, which, come on, show. But unfortunately, the show didn't do anything with this when it has the potential to be expanded upon. Hell, even Dipper's admission that he's super insecure and needs to be the smart one or else he's nothing also has potential. It kind of makes me wonder if they actually meant anything with these admissions or they're just jokes like Mabel and Seuss's. It does really suck that they never could give Winnie a chance to legitimately shine and come out on their own. Most of this is a plot device for most of her appearances, when she could have been so much more. Maybe I'm expecting too much from my character whose middle name is canonically blurrable. But I've also noticed a kind of big problem with 2 episodes that have practically contradicting morals. Like, I really want to ask this. So in the 6th episode, Dipper vs. Manliness, Dipper has own insecurities about being manly enough, even though he's literally freaking 12, and even his family makes fun of him for it. Also, side note, but is it just me, or does the show just love picking on this kid for no reason? Like, I swear, so many times the show and characters constantly punish him and dig at his insecurities, with so many resolutions just being that he should eat it. It makes it a bit hard to watch. But he trains with the mystical Manutars. Wait, is this a reference to that one random character in Adventure Time, Manus the Manly Minotaur? It's pretty close. To become a man through the regimen, and honestly does a pretty good job. Like, I don't think most of the town could do the stuff he did here, and I kind of feel the show doesn't acknowledge all he did hereafter. But his final challenge is to climb a mountain and slay the multi-bear, and he literally chokes him out. Again, how is he treated as a wimpy kid when he choked out a demon bear monster? However, the bear speaks and says it's being bullied by the Manitars because they think he's a wimp and likes the same girly music that they get shunned for. So, he realizes he can't do it despite the Manitars goading him that he'll never be a man if he doesn't fight them, and admits if that's what it takes, then he'll never be a man. But surprisingly, Grungle Stan stands up for his choice. They didn't give him his morals and stood up for himself and became his own man. It's actually a good message, especially in this day and age, that you shouldn't be peer pressured to give up who you are and do bad things because you're not man enough and the problems of toxic masculinity and not to fall for it. It's pretty good. But that lesson gets ruined by a later episode, Fight Fighters. Like, I wish I could like this episode more because of the fun concept and amazing sprite animation, but oh my god, the problems. So, thanks again to Wendy romance, Robbie wants to rub it in his face, where Dipper accidentally breaks his phone as Robbie then challenges him to a fight. Yes, the 16-year-old just challenged a 12-year-old kid to a fight. Okay, side note, but Robbie, how the hell do you come out of this looking good at all? Either somehow you lose and your reputation goes to crap because you got beat up by a 12-year-old, or even worse, congratulations, you beat the shit out of a 12-year-old half your size. Everyone is going to hate you because you beat up a child. If you brag about it, people are gonna punch you. What do you possibly gain from this outside of the achievement of punching a kid? Again, he's the worst character in the show. Imagine being so pathetic that you have genuine beef with a 12-year-old kid you barely know. But to make things worse, Dipper's panicking that's to fight a teenager when he's never fought anyone, and no one has his back on it. It probably just makes it worse.
You can either go face him like a man, or you can hide indoors like a wimp. What'll it be?
Wimpiters!
Like, seriously, what the f***, show? Can you imagine actually going to a 12-year-old kid who got threatened by a 16-year-old who's gonna beat him up and then tell him, well, you gotta fight him or else you're not a man? At least Stan I can understand because, well, he's Stan, and much later is kind of a point to it. But even Zeus and Mayo practically ignored the problem and goaded him anyway. Like, what the actual hell? But he ends up in typical fashion bringing to life a fighting game character that the Dipper hopes to use him and goes to Robbie, who legitimately meant it and was waiting for him there, gets surprised to see Rumble with him. And Dipper doesn't want to use Rumble to actually beat up Robbie. He just wants to intimidate him so he'll back off. And you know what? It's deserved. Robbie is only doing this because he wants to be on a power trip and get into a fight he knows he has no way to lose. And then suddenly the tables turned, now faced with a fight he can't win. But then when Rumble actually gets physical, Dipper immediately tries to tell him to back off. He doesn't actually want to have Robbie hurt, despite everything. and desperately tries to stop Rumble only to have him face him, and then forced to fight in a worse fight he has no chance of making out alive, and again told that if he's not a man.
You sure you wouldn't rather hide like a wimp? Fight like a man it is.
And then gets beaten nearly to death. Like, seriously, this should have killed him, as Robbie can't even bring himself to fight Dipper. He just wants to scare and harass him because, again, this is a huge power trip for him. As Wendy comes back being irrelevant as ever, as the show still treats it like Dipper has a legitimate chance with her despite everything. Yeah, when I say this rewatch really ruined episodes for me, this is one of the biggest examples because I grew to actually hate this episode. Like, it completely contradicts the previous episode's moral. Don't fall for the idea of toxic masculinity and don't get into a pointless fight because you'll be bullied and not treated as a man for it. Then this episode goes and says, hey, totally get into a pointless fight. You're not a man if you do. Who cares? Just do it. Like, what the hell, show?
Deal the multi-bear or never be a man.
And I guess I'll never be a man.
You can either go face him like a man, or you can hide indoors like a wimp.
Wimp it is.
Now, I know what you're thinking. The message is that you can't run away from your problems and you need to fight them head on. But that's not really the narrative, because this isn't a thing that Dipper needed to do. This wasn't some responsibility he has, or something that he caused and he has to clean up. This was some pasty going on a power trip, harassing and getting physical with a 12-year-old kid because he wanted to prove he's better than him, and challenging him to a fight because he knows that he can't lose. And no one is on Dipper's side and pretty much says he's to fight this guy anyway for nothing more than not being man enough to tell him to go get beat up already. Dipper didn't ask for this, he didn't deserve this, and he did everything to not do this, talk him out of it when he clearly won't listen, had to resort to intimidation, again not even wanting to fight when the odds are on his side, and gets brutally beaten for it. Don't try to bother taking it diplomatically, kids, just get physical ASAP. God, this is like that one Sponge episode that's also kind of terrible in that regard. One guy says he's gonna beat him up, and despite SpongeBob doing everything we're told on how to get away from bullying, only to not have it work at all and still have to get beaten. But at least there, Flat someone get everyone to ignore what he was doing. Here the characters flat tell Dipper he should get beat up because he's not a man if he's not, and actively provoke it. Like, who the hell is gonna think he's not a man? This is like some school. He's here for the summer. No one actually knows him. If they wanted to get that you can't avoid your problems message, they should have done something else to get that across, because this message feels legitimately harmful. Like some kid's gonna be in this exact position, get the tar beaten out of him, because the show reinforces he has to be a man about it, and the bullies for sure won't actually commit to what they say. And believe me, I know for a fact that if you actually retaliate against bullying in schools, you're gonna be in just as much, if not even more trouble, so that's even worse in this regard. I've actually grown to legitimately hate this episode. The message is horrible, the characters are horrible, the story is not really good. I think the gimmick was the thing distracting most people from how incredibly problematic this episode is. Like, please tell me I'm not alone here, that I'm not the only one who sees how bad this episode is, right? Also, I really gotta bring up Time Traveler's Pig because the plot is pretty dang flimsy. His friend does another Wendy Simp scheme, which again, this is a bad plot device because you can't care about it. It just so treats it like there's actual development going on when there's just not. I want to interrupt with something positive like in Summer Ween, which I think is a fantastic episode, great atmosphere, and amazingly done as a Halloween special in summer. And it did have a Wendy conflict, even with Robbie. While it does set up that Dipper wants to ditch Mabel and instead go to a teenage Halloween party, the plot thankfully avoids that, but with the main conflict being to avoid the wrath of the trickster before he devours them. There, it more provokes the conflict that Dipper wants to mature faster, and they think he's too old for trick-or-treating, when May wants to enjoy the time they have left. With Dipper even agreeing at the end, when it kinda comes back, that he was enjoying his time with his youth and spending on some dumb Halloween party. Like, it's actually a really good way to handle it, with it being something in the side that more provokes Dipper's own insecurities than have the entire plot be around him, again trying to get with a teenager has no chance with. Summer Ween is such a great episode and an amazing Halloween special. Unfortunately, this episode does kind of the exact opposite. We're not just gonna do that as a side thing, we're gonna do it 50 times even to the point of ridiculousness. So they meet Blendin' Blendin', a time traveler with a voice actor that did not age well, and uses time travel device so that Dipper can constantly redo his mistake hitting Winnie with a ball trying to win her a prize, as Male wins and hangs out with her new pig Waddles. But Dipper can't avoid the same circumstance no matter how hard he tries. It does imply the universe itself is not allowing Dipper to change the timeline by always making the same outcome, which is interesting, but the existence of an anomaly removal crew in the future kinda completely disproves that. So it's less that you can't change the timeline and more that the writers won't give up on this plot. Dipper finds the only way he can change it in his favor is to get Mabel's help. which amounts to literally just propping up a gutter to direct the ball somewhere else. That would be bad enough, but this is dire for the plot, as this makes Mabel unable to win Waddles as Pacifica, another bully with absolutely no complexity until season 2, gets him instead and probably abuses him. And the plot holes, oh my god! Like, normally the show's plots are pretty tightly written, or at least don't have serious problems, but here it just breaks the episode. You really couldn't prop up that pipe with a rock or a stick or something. You don't need Mabel at all. You could just arrive 20 seconds early so that Mabel can win Waddles and then do it. There's a million ways around it the show doesn't acknowledge and treats it like, oh no, it has to be done this way, there's no alternative. Like, if you're gonna do that, write something else like Mabel actively need to direct the ball somewhere else that can't be done without someone active. And even then, can you get Seuss or someone to help instead? He just disappears for most of the episode after the intro. He will 100% be down for some time travel. Yeah, there's just so many ways around this that becomes a huge issue when the episode depends on it and treats it like there's no other alternative. As Mabel then out of spite starts to fundamentally ruin the timeline because she's mad at Dipper, which, wow, okay, she could literally destroy everything because of it. You know, unravel the entire timeline because fairsies. I feel Mabel can be like especially spiteful at times when she doesn't get what she wants. Like I didn't mention before, but in Gobblewalker, she throws out one of the cameras purposely when Dipper doesn't immediately make her captain, or shoving and yelling at him when he's worried about Norman. And if anything, that just gets worse and worse. But eventually Mabel resigns to her misery, effectively bawling out Dipper to undo his work to make her happy.
But bonkers after her dreams were shattered by some heartless jerk. Oh, hey, Dipper.
Now, okay, getting Waddles is much more important objectively than this another Dipper sib scheme for a girl he can never return his feelings, which does remove pretty much any investment in this choice. It's another reason why relying on this plot so many times just cannot work. Now, I would excuse the sacrifice as perfectly fine if it was just in this episode, but it happened so many times in the season, and frankly the show, that it ruins a lot of episodes for me and contributes to a bigger problem. Really evident in Little Dipper, where it starts with Dipper beating Mabel at chess, but then Mabel being told that she's taller by 1 millimeter, as in everyone just drives it in, calling him too short and inferior, and just pushes him to do something about it because he keeps getting bullied. Why does this keep happening? Like, leave the poor kid alone. I swear the show has it out for him all the time. What gives? So he gets the magical size altering crystals, which really should cause mycological damage, just to make them even again so they'll stop being bullied. Mabel still doesn't give it up. He only becomes taller to get her off their back, which does lead to a fight since Mabel won't let them be taller, lead to Gideon getting the flashlight and treating the two as they get back to the shack before him. But when they do get the flashlight back, Dipper worries about them being equal over their original height, which Mabel berates him since it's not the time for that, even though Mabel herself did it multiple times, but the show gets out to call out Dipper on it this time.
We're finally the same height again.
Actually...
Need to get higher.
Yeah, especially you, because you're short.
But Dipper finally says the reason why he's so focused on it is that Mabel didn't stop teasing and harassing him about it, and she justifies that he beats her at everything and rubs it in, and this was her chance to feel good about herself. And like, no? Dipper through the show has never pushed any of his skills and accomplishments in Mabel's face. If anything, Mabel constantly digs into Dipper's insecurities for no reason. The only thing in this episode to support that is this one time in the beginning where Dipper beats Mabel at chess when she wasn't even seriously playing, and then doing this.
Oh! Dipper wins again!
Yo, Mabel, can you...
That is literally it. So this claim has absolutely nothing to stand on and flimsily justifies Mabel's awful behavior.
Oh, man. Now I feel like a big jerk.
You shouldn't. You really didn't do anything wrong. She also never apologizes for it. And don't give me that. That's just siblings. Their relationship is wholesome until an episode decides it's not. And in the end, Dipper gives us everything he's worked for to make Mabel happy, let's just keep the extra millimeter. So the show constantly berates and belittles Dipper for his insecurities he can do nothing about, where he only does something about to get them to back off, only with Mabel's actions never getting an apology with a non-existent justification that puts Dipper as the bad guy despite nothing he actually did, and Mabel gets what she wanted and frankly doesn't actually learn anything. I guarantee you if the roles were reversed, the show would just tell Dipper he needs to eat it.
Aw, thanks, little brother.
Stop it.
And there's more episodes like it, like The Deep End, but especially Carpet Diem, where Mabel invites Candy and Grant to a sleepover without telling Dipper at all and kick them out of their room for the entire night. Granted, Dipper doesn't just go on the couch or anything and instead goes outside. I don't think that's my first thought, but then again they show you can still hear them even still. Where he's attacked by wolves and other forest creatures as he says later. Dipper is rightfully pissed off, especially after she trashed the room and tried to say no more sleepovers, but Mabel says then he can keep her awake with reading. And okay, that's a problem, but that's easily solved with a, hey, can you shut up, I'm trying to sleep, then eventually getting kicked down and forced to sleep outside with no warning. And after Dipper reasonably says that if they can come to an agreement, then they shouldn't sleep together. Which gets a solution when Seuss finds a mysterious old room that totally wasn't a clue to anything big in the future. But Dipper wants the room so they can be done with the BS, but Mabel suddenly wants it too. Like, okay, the kid was mauled by a wolf because of you. You really don't have a right to say anything. Like, Dipper wants it to not have to deal with any more slumber party crap after he was completely ignored, and Mabel just wants it out of spite. And Stan, being the wonderful parental figure he is gonna make them compete for who gets it. But the carpet was experimental. Okay, Ford, what were you doing with it? And swaps it two's bodies. And just two, that's convenient. Now, body swap episodes are pretty contentious for some reason. It's a very reoccurring trope, like every show does it at some point. A lot of people have problems with it. Personally, I don't mind them. I think a lot of people get too hung up on the switching voices thing too. But a lot of them do kind of fall into the same old trappings, but there is potential, like having a character realize the problems in the other's lives, and leaving with a greater respect for their struggles, or more intense hero-villain swaps. But this episode takes on one of the worst approaches and just has the characters try to ruin each other's lives and reputations. Now, it's not as bad as, say, the way Jimmy Neutron did it, where the two just sabotage each other for no reason than spite and hate, since there is an established conflict and plot that this supports, since they're in a competition with Mabel in the lead and something that Dipper wants, but it's still disappointing. Especially since they could have tied to the conflict at the beginning, they don't understand the other's struggle, and this would be the perfect vehicle to get the point across, but instead they just use it for some really bottom of the barrel and obvious jokes. Like, they could have explored why the other does the things they do and the difficulties, but instead they use it for, ha, Twilight's stupid and learn about puberty jokes. There's not real introspection. But it is safe somewhat with Seuss and Waddle switching bodies, which is the best part of the episode. Seuss really is the one character of the show who was the MVP ever since the beginning and never dropped it all until the end. He is the best. But it does lead to one part that really bothers me. So he gets hunted down by McGucket and cornered with the best joke of the episode.
Don't eat me! I'm a man trapped in a pig's body!
That's what they all say!
So he's stuck. He can't get away. There's no way out. But then later he randomly runs back to the shack with McGucket still chasing him like, what happened after the cliffhanger ad break? How did he get away? He was completely cornered. You have to tell me. This has bothered me ever since I've seen it. Please tell me, Alex.
I'm gonna make you into bacon!
Oh, that sounds pretty good. Wait, I mean...
No!
Mabel and Dipper's body refuses to change backs and still have the key, which, again, she has no reason to want the room aside from spite. The conflict isn't well earned, as it leads to a huge body swap soon with everyone switching until they somehow get to the right bodies, when the odds are against it. But the two acknowledge that both don't even want to move out, as Dipper says because he keeps hanging out with their friends as he's left behind.
Everything was fine until you started bringing your friends around every night. Now you're always with Candy and Grenda, and I'm, like, just left behind.
But that wasn't really the conflict. The conflict was that Mabel was insanely inconsiderate with Dipper, never giving a heads up on the spontaneous throwing a slumber party in their room and making them sleep outside, and a few other stuff that Dipper does. It wasn't any sort of attention thing. They had problems they need to resolve with each other. The episode just kind of ignores it, treats it like something entirely different. As Dipper sleeps in the room by himself, lonely without her, so pretty much Dipper again has to give up what he's worked for. But again, what gets me is that this doesn't acknowledge the actual problems. They never come to a compromise with their issues. Mabel's probably gonna do the same exact thing again. It doesn't feel like she actually learned how she hurt Dipper in that way. And again, she did all that stuff in the episode out of spite for Dipper rightfully not wanting to be in the same room if Mabel's gonna keep being so inconsiderate. Again, he was attacked by wolves and the show doesn't acknowledge it. I know it's a gag, but it's really not the type of cartoon, and it's the catalyst for the conflict. And all of that is ignored at the end, just because they feel lonely. So they had everything set up for the twins to understand what the other goes through and try to be better through the body swap, but it didn't actually do anything with it. It's pretty disappointing, and I know the show can do better. Just so much of the season is ruined by episodes with really bad plot beats, like based off of Dipper sins for Wendy plots, or Dipper has to get out what he's worked for to make Mabel happy plots. Sometimes even in the same episode like The Deep End, where Dipper only gets involved because Wendy is randomly a lifeguard in the local pool and wants to have an excuse to hang out with her. But the more important plot is that Mabel meets and falls in love with a merman trapped in the pool and wants to help him get out. And there's the fact that Mabel never actually tells Dipper about Mermando and instead breaks in and steals pool property to get him in hot water with Mr. Poolcheck, despite the fact that Dipper would 100% help her out in the situation. It could make everything run smoother since they have a guy on the inside with total access to the tools. Like, this seriously bothers me. She has literally no reason not to tell him, as it's infinitely worse as he tries to chase after her because from his perspective, she's stealing pool property and trying to get him fired, only then to reveal, oh yeah, I'm trying to save an innocent magical creature. And Dipper has to save his life by doing reverse mouth-to-mouth. And then Mabel...
Blackmail.
Okay, seriously, what the f, girl? She is literally saving your boyfriend's life and you're trying to blackmail him? Like, what the hell? This is kind of a thing I've noticed where the show will occasionally, like, break a character just to force a joke or scene. It's giving me a lot of Benton Omniverse vibes.
Someone's trying to steal the orb. The ball? Oh!
Like how Wendy randomly emotionally manipulates Mabel to get out of work when something seriously important to her in Boss Mabel. Also kind of reminded me of Land Before Swine when Seuss knew his stuff most of the time despite being a goofy guy, but then is suddenly written as being an incompetent moron who can't do anything right, and it's treated like he always was like this. It's a great episode, but that was its biggest problem. I guess he did have one blemish in his track record. But Mermando needs to get Dipper's megaphone to call his family back, but he'll get fired if he loses it, and again Dipper has to get what he's worth for to make Mabel happy. And I know helping Mermando get back to his family is objectively more important than another Wendy Sim scheme, and later shows Wendy got fired anyway, but the fact this happens again and again, that's such a problem. Like, seriously, check it out. A good chunk of episodes in this season are Dipper sins for Wendy in a relationship that can't work out, and also have Dipper give us what he's worked for to make Mabel happy. Sometimes you literally get both in the same episode. It drags on the season so much that it keeps doing these stupid plot beats. Like, there's problems even beyond the con complaint episode like Boy's Crazy, which Wendy finally owns up that Robbie's a one-note jerk with no redeeming qualities, and I really don't know why they went on the first place.
Robbie, you're a stupid, arrogant fraud. But kiss me anyway because you can play guitar.
And that they should break up. As Robbie has remedied this by playing the Necronomicon audiobook CD that plays a song that literally hypnotizes her back to falling in love with him. What the hell? Where did he get that? Like it has an ancient curse-looking cover and actually hypnotizes Wendy to forget everything. How the hell did he get it and know how to use it? It reminds me of how there used to be a fan theory that Robbie was actually a zombie the whole time, the Stitch Heart logo, how he avoided the paranormal traps at the convenience store, and especially the journal saying that zombies are mistaken as teenagers with their pale skin and bad attitudes, which is exactly like him, and that we can somehow get an unholy dark magic CD. Hell, later we see he literally lives at a cemetery, but apparently he just wasn't? Which is actually disappointing because not only would that be a much more interesting and good twist than the shallow character he is, it would answer a lot of problems. But Dipper does prove that the song has a reverse message that does hypnotize when played, and Robbie defends himself that it wasn't even his song, he just plagiarized it. Apparently Alex said the song wasn't hypnotic at all and Winnie just really liked it, but like, no, that makes no sense. A demonic CD cover, Wendy immediately forgetting she's mad at him, and the CD literally having a subliminal message. There has to be something going on, and the CD is one of the things that pissed me off the most in this show. Like, what is it? As they break up, as Dipper immediately tries to get with her on the rebound just to get told off because seriously, dude, what the hell? It makes me seriously feel bad for Wendy. Like, God, her entire purpose this season is to be a romance puppet. It's the worst recurring subplot in the show. I get why this episode isn't like, the plot really isn't that interesting, and everyone's just pretty stupid. Though at least it does end with Mabel finally realizing her selfishness, kicking her friends out and lying to her pet boy band and releases them, which is one of the few endings in the show that she actually gives up something and is just rewarded. Which does give me to the big problem and controversy, the Mabel selfishness problem. This is the biggest point of contention in the entire show, and I guarantee you there's gonna be a ton of arguments about it. And to be fair, I was once a part of the deniers. When I first heard it, I thought people were being way too mean and harsh on a kid and didn't do anything that bad. Then I rewatched the show and oh my god. Like, there's a reason why I want to give the examples and points first before I gave my stance, because people are gonna judge me right there. I need to prove my perspective first. But you can see where I'm coming from. So many episodes have Mabel be completely inconsiderate and downright mean, bullying Dipper, and so often the perfect resolution is that Dipper gives up what he's worked for the whole episode just to make Mabel happy. I'll get to why in particular I think so many people have a problem and how it's executed. It ruins so many episodes, and it makes Mabel seem so much like a selfish brat who wants to get what she wants, and so continually punishes Dipper for no reason that he should eat it, despite Mabel rarely getting called out on what she does or trying to be better. The only other time Mabel actually stops acting that way is in season 2. Now, season 2 was a huge improvement to the show with a lot more imaginative and plot-driven stuff. It does a lot of that tropist nature of the first season. The writing got a lot better. But this is one problem that might have gotten worse. Where in Sock Opera, Dipper and Mabel want to decode the laptop, but Mabel gets smitten by a puppeteer named Gabe and wants to impress them with a puppet show, and leaves Dipper to do it all himself. Now, it's a mean move, but there is a reason. I get it. She even tries to put it off before she gets goaded again by Gabe to fully commit to it. As now, with limited options, he has to make a deal with Bill, who flat out calls Mabel out on her BS, and all the times where he had to save them and gives up what he's continually worked for her never to actually pay him back. Like, the show is legitimately pointing out all the times that Mabel got exactly what she wanted by taking advantage of Dipper. Like, oh my god. But then he possesses Dipper as we get the moment that pisses me the hell off.
Dipper, I borrowed your journal to use as a prop in the show. I hope you don't mind. I'm gonna go before you process the sentence. Okay, bye!
Okay, what the hell, show? What is this? This is the prime example of what I mean that the show will break a character to force a joke or scene. Mabel defenders, you know she's smarter than this. She knows how important the journal is objectively, and for Dipper, just have her practically steal it to use as a goddamn prop when literally any other book would do the job just as well. And the show pretty much just validates Bill's claim as she immediately proves that she does prioritize her own endeavors over other people and their property. Like, what? I'm sorry, Mabel, but the unicorn is kind of right.
I can see deep inside your heart, child. And you have done wrong. Wrong, I say.
How is that even possible? Mabel's a straight-up saint, you judgmental hoofbag.
Also, funny how Dipper was hesitant to give away one of Mabel's surplus puppets, as she immediately steals Dipper's most precious belonging with zero hesitation. I know it's good for the situation since Bill was gonna destroy it, but she sure as hell didn't know that. She literally just drops it in another prop. Why did she even bother? And again, Bill calls her out.
No way! This is Dipper's! I'd never give it away!
You didn't seem to have a problem taking it for your own play, or ditching him when he needed you.
Like, the show doesn't prove him wrong. But Mabel does actually sacrifice what she's worked for to save Dipper, so hey, she actually did it once. She sacrificed herself and destroyed the play and lost getting with Gabe. Until the show literally makes it worthless. As Gabe is shown to be a psychopath, kissing his hands as if they were real, as Mabel acknowledges that she dodged the bullet. So, you just invalidated the sacrifice. Like, what? Mabel didn't really lose anything. If anything, it's good that she sacrificed her play. And that's not a sacrifice if it benefits you. If you did make it, like, come on. Mabel probably just got rewarded for it. And yeah, I know a few times Dipper's sacrifice kind of got invalidated, but the problem was it kept happening again and again. This is practically the one time Mabel does so, as the show builds up that she's finally gonna give something up for Dipper, and the show actually is gonna prove you wrong, that she can't sacrifice what she wants for Dipper, and that her sacrifice be completely negated after, so she lost nothing. It's just, why, show? At least Mabel does apologize for her selfishness, which is nice, but again it takes the huge problem of Dipper continually has to get what he's worth for Mabel, which gets to its peak at the literal finale, well, the second part. Now, I'm not going to be too harsh on her in Verse of the Future where she gives Bill Blenheim the rift. Like, I know she's 12 and she's in a very vulnerable state and she doesn't know it's Bill in there, so I'm not going to get into that. But I will say from the description, it does kind of sound like Mabel was 100% willing to effectively WandaVision the entire town, so you can stay in her fantasy forever, which, wow, that's not good. As with the apocalypse, Mabel is given everything she wants in Mabelland. Actually, why does Mabelland exist? No, I'm legitimately asking, why did Bill bother doing all this if he won and should just kill her? He doesn't need her anymore, nor cares about the Zodiac. He literally tried to kill Dipper in the first part, and the third also has to kill both of them. So, why did he bother giving Mabel a paradise to contain her? You could say maybe gratitude, but Bill's basically Satan. He's not the generous type. Like, he says it's a trap. What do you get out of trapping them at all? Like, can someone please give me an actual reason that isn't that they need it for the story? But it's everything Mabel wants, and she gets everything she ever needs, never wanting to leave. It's the perfect escape from her responsibilities in growing up. Even despite the goading of her friends that there is a literal apocalypse she technically caused, she refused to leave and gets them to agree with her that reality bites and that they should stay here and ignore everything. Even creating a new super cool Dipper who always agrees with what she says to validate her, which, like, what the f***? Holy shit, that is messed up in so many ways, and she actually never gets called out on it. This is pretty much her absolute selfishness, where Dipper has to pretty much make up an entire trial case just to finally let her take responsibility for her own actions and stop being so self-serving. Also, now I only hear Kevin 11 with Kraz, and it's driving me crazy. Thanks, Greg Sipes.
My case is simple. This very unrighteous dude thinks that reality is better than fantasy. But reality is bogus, lame, and whack.
Where Dipper has to try and make a case for her and why she's acting this way, that she's afraid to grow up, but that they'll always have each other, and to clinch it, promises that he won't take up for its offer as his literal dream he's worked for all season just to be with her. So this is literally the ultimate. Dipper has to give up what he's worked for to make Mabel happy conclusion, and the show practically ends on it. Now, I know what Alex said, that it wasn't a good idea and that Ford would have turned Dipper into another McGucket and that 12-year-olds shouldn't sacrifice their future to go monster hunting. But the show never treats it like there's anything wrong with it. It's treated as Dipper's literal dream come true with no caveats, that he has to give up so that his sister can stop being so selfish and save the world. And that's a thing that really sours it, because again and again this happens. Dipper works hard to get something for life to beat him up and tell him that he can't have it or just eat it, as Mabel gets rewarded for being selfish and never grows from it. She never gets told to take it and barely puts in any work to anything meaningful, and yet ends up winning every time. And literally even to the end, it doesn't stop. And that seriously drives it down. I know the entire show is about maturity, but things like this really damper the themes and morals. Mabel does fight back against Mabeland because of that though, so she does move someone past this insane selfishness, but I really don't know how much that's worth it when Dipper also gave up everything, and the fact that this was a reward for literally causing the apocalypse. And I know the big defense, she's just a kid. Kids are selfish and bratty, that's just how they are. I know, I've seen this stupid ass image. First of all, Mabel's a 12-year-old kid who is stupid and selfish and gets rewarded for it, and it's like, oh, that's just okay, she's a kid, she doesn't know any better. Meanwhile, Greg Heffley's a 12-year-old kid who is stupid and selfish for popularity that usually blows up in his face, and now he's an irredeemable psychopath. Double standards much? But this point is missing the big problem. Kids are selfish and bratty, and will keep being selfish and bratty. The key thing is, you don't reward that! You don't reward selfish behavior and attitude, or else you reinforce it. You have to tell them that they can't be that way, and that they need to move past it to become a functional human being. And the show again and again continually rewards Mabel for that, doesn't acknowledge her problems, and barely moves past it. Like an example, Ben 10 from Classic is also a kid, 10 years old, and he's a kid, he's selfish and bratty. But at least most episodes end with him learning he can't be that way and tries to get better. The only problem is the episodic nature of the show makes it that these can't stick. For a serialized show, this should not be such a reoccurring and big problem. It's like with PB and Adventure Time, who also has a lot of defenders who ignore all the problems they caused. I don't like it when a show continually bends over backwards to make sure that they have a character repeatedly do bad things and never get called out on it, never face any consequences, ruin other characters and their arcs because of it, and frankly just plenty of episode plots on their own as they become a character who never actually grows or develops in a meaningful way, as the show pretends that they do, despite always keeping them exactly as self-destructive as they are, whereas the audience has to live with a character who doesn't grow and continues to be terrible with no consequences. You just ignore all of that because they're cute. Okay, but to be honest, Mabel is way better than PB. I don't see her destroying a foreign nation's infrastructure out of nothing but paranoia, doesn't even try to handle it diplomatically, never apologized, and says that they don't care as the show ignores everything they did to reward them to force a happy ending. Just to be clear, I don't actually hate Mabel. She's fun and a lot of episodes do her really well, and she's great in plenty. It's just that this is a reoccurring problem in this show that it needs to be addressed. I'm like a teacher. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed in you, Miss Pines, and I know you can do better. Unfortunately, the show itself never addresses it. Well, it did once, but they sucked at it. At least until after the run in the Lost Legends comic, telling a handful of new stories. Great book, I love it. But the third story finally made Mabel acknowledge her selfish behavior and trying to move past it, where we see a separate dimension of a bunch of parallel Mabels trapped in one place. I actually have a similar thing myself. How else do you think I fish up my different personas from my videos? Where she has to face her worst nightmare of dealing with herself trying to get out of there with no one here to do the work for her, and has to do with hundreds of herself being so self-centered and unfocused that she can't get any help in a dire situation. And soon realizes how selfish and inconsiderate she is, and that she needs to grow past it to be a better person, and promises to change if she gets back. And it's like, yes, this is all I've ever wanted. Finally, some actual acknowledgement and character development. It's beautiful. Unfortunately, since this is bonus material after the show, it's kind of a too little too late thing. I know this was obviously made to deal with the complaints about Mabel's character after the show, but I just wish that someone on the writing team noticed how much was a problem during the run itself. And yeah, so I went on this freaking long about my problems with the show, and you gotta ask, does it make the show bad because of it? Hell no, this show is freaking fantastic! Gravity Falls is an amazing show. As I said before, this is me purposely going through most of the worst it has to offer, ignoring some other common points like Love God's horrible ending that roofing people is okay if they're happy, and Road to the Attractions' kind of bad story and bad placement near the end of the run. My feelings don't reflect my feelings on the show, even the episodes as a whole. Like, I still like sock opera with the problems I mentioned. Even a lot of these episodes had great jokes, moments, and other elements help them up even with the problems I stated. How most of my complaints were on the first season. Season 2 was a whole lot stronger. When Gravity Falls gets good, it's freaking amazing. It's some of the best experiences and moments in animated history. That it deserves a lot of its status, and its influence is completely undeniable. I love this show. It's my favorite show ever for the impact it's had on me despite everything I've said. I mean, come on, if this is the worst of the worst a show can get, that's really saying a lot. For my talking about how bad some of the filler was, it gave us some amazing filler episodes like Summerween, Lamb Before Swine, and hell, my favorite episode, Zeus and the Real Gold, could be considered filler. When Gravity Falls flies above, it completely soars, and it's no wonder why it's so loved and influential, with a lot of other shows taking notes and inspiration from it. But as great as it is, we should acknowledge its problems. It's not perfect by any means. And the main reason I'm doing this is because Gravity Falls feels like it's put onto a pedestal, and other shows after they get unfairly compared to it. Ignoring that Gravity Falls wasn't perfect either, and has plenty of the same problems, if not even worse. It's that mindset I completely hate that destroys media appreciation, exaggerating problems while ignoring that stuff with what you were comparing it to. Treating it as perfect and untouchable with exaggerated perspective. It's a problem I see all the time and I can't stand it. Does I say we shouldn't overly judge and hate media and appreciate the effort behind it and what it does do well? We should accept problems and stuff we like as well. Nothing is perfect, and expecting that is setting yourself for disappointment. We should enjoy things despite its flaws, and accept them, and appreciate all media because of it. Despite everything I talked about, Gravity Falls is amazing, and it's done a lot for me. Just acknowledge that it wasn't perfect the whole way, and that's kind of the point of the show. Growing up and breaking through such a mindset, realizing the world is much deeper and more complex than you first thought. So, as the bus goes back home, just remember that. And most of all, please, please, please don't kill me! I'm sorry! Yeah, no doubt many people are gonna be upset and go against what I said, and you know what? I'll accept it. I can admit that I'm wrong. If you have a good point against what I said, leave it down below. Just, please try and be civil about it, please.